Ethan Carter had always believed that early mornings carried a kind of quiet magic. The sun had barely risen when he stepped outside his small wooden house on the ranch, stretching his arms and taking in the cool air that brushed across his face. His ranch sat far from the main town, with open fields stretching in all directions and hills rolling softly toward the horizon. Most people found the place too quiet, but Ethan loved this silence. It gave him peace, especially after years of hard work and long days spent caring for the cattle. He saddled up his horse, a calm brown mare named Willow, who nudged his shoulder gently as if reminding him not to forget her morning pat. Ethan smiled, ran a hand down her neck, and whispered, "Let's go check on everyone today, girl." Willow gave a small snort in return, ready for the day. He rode out into the open fields, letting Willow move at her steady, comfortable pace. The sky was painted in pale orange, and the world felt soft and new. Ethan often used these morning rides to think about his plans for the day, fixing a fence here, checking the water supply there, counting the cattle, and making sure everything on the ranch stayed in order. It was the kind of work that didn't make him rich, but it gave him satisfaction and allowed him to sleep peacefully at night. As Ethan continued across the grasslands, he noticed the usual sounds of nature, birds beginning their morning songs, insects humming quietly, and the distant mooing of cows gathering near the watering area. Everything seemed perfectly normal, just like any other day. But the peace didn't last long. As Willow moved toward the far side of the ranch, Ethan saw something unusual in the distance. There was an old wooden shed near the edge of the property, something that had been there long before he bought the land. It had once been used as a storage place for tools and feed, but now it mostly sat empty, its roof leaning slightly and its paint faded from too many summers. He rarely had any reason to visit it, and hardly anyone else even knew it existed. But today, the shed didn't look as quiet as usual. Ethan saw movement, quick, strange movement, something shifting near the front of the shed. At first, he thought it might be an animal, maybe a stray or a deer that found shelter inside. But the movement didn't look natural. It was slight, quick, and repeated every few seconds. Ethan pulled Willow to a stop, narrowing his eyes as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. The distance made things blurry, but he felt a sudden tug of alertness inside him. Something wasn't right. He gave Willow a light tap with his heel, and she moved forward a bit faster this time. As he rode closer, he listened carefully. At first he heard nothing but the wind brushing through the tall grass. But then faintly, so faintly he almost thought he imagined it, he heard a sound. It wasn't the cry of an animal or the sound of wooden boards shifting on their own. It was a voice, a small voice, a scared voice. Ethan's heart tightened. He leaned forward on Willow, urging her to move even quicker now. The closer he got, the clearer the sound became. It was a muffled cry, soft and shaky, like someone trying to call out but unable to speak loudly. He stopped about 30 feet away, trying to see through the dim morning light. And then he saw her, a young girl. She was standing near the side of the shed, clearly in distress. Her hands appeared tied behind her back, and there was something around her that made Ethan's chest tighten further. She looked exhausted, frightened, and on the edge of tears. The moment Ethan realized she was trapped in a dangerous setup, one that could harm her if not handled carefully, his heart dropped. He didn't know how she got there, who had brought her, or how long she had been alone. But none of that mattered in that moment. What mattered was getting her out safely. Ethan swung off Willow with urgency, but kept his steps calm. He didn't want to scare her further. As he approached, he spoke gently, his voice steady and warm. "Hey there," he said softly. "You're safe now. I'm going to help you. All right?" The girl's eyes widened in relief the moment she saw him. She tried to speak, but her voice came out shaky and broken. Ethan could see she had been trying to free herself for a long time. She must have struggled all night, or at least for hours, before someone finally heard her cries. Ethan carefully scanned the situation. The setup she was trapped in wasn't stable. One wrong move could have caused her to fall or tighten the rope holding her. Ethan had handled many difficult things in his life: animals in trouble, storms that damaged his ranch, and emergencies in town. But he had never faced a situation quite like this. He took a slow, deep breath to steady himself. Everything depended on him now. He stepped closer, lowering his voice even more. "Listen to me," he said gently. "You're not alone anymore. I know you're scared. But I'm going to get you out of here, I promise. Just try to stay still, okay?" The girl nodded, though her breath was uneven. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out his pocket knife. It was small but strong, something he always carried while working on the ranch. He looked at the rope that held her, studying every detail. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing because he knew that timing mattered. He cut the smaller ropes around her wrists first, trying not to cause her any discomfort. Once her hands were free, she immediately held onto the nearby wooden beam, trying to support herself. The main rope, the one tied above her, was the real problem. It was tight and supporting most of her weight. If he didn't act quickly and correctly, she could slip, and that was something he wanted to avoid at all costs. He positioned himself behind her, holding her shoulders gently to support her. "I'm right here," he said softly. "I need you to trust me for a moment." She nodded again, tears forming in her eyes, but Ethan could tell she felt safer now that someone was with her. He reached up to the rope, sliding the knife into place. His hands hovered for a moment as he calculated the angle. He needed to cut it so that she wouldn't fall abruptly. He planned to support her weight with his arm the moment the rope loosened. Ethan inhaled deeply. The world around him felt still, as if even the wind paused to watch. Then, with one firm motion, he slashed the rope. The tension snapped. Ethan tightened his grip around her shoulders instantly, catching her weight and pulling her gently against him so she wouldn't fall. The girl let out a shaky breath, half relief, half exhaustion. She leaned into him, trembling but safe. "It's all right now," he murmured. "You're okay. You're safe." For a long moment they stayed still, Ethan supporting her and the girl trying to steady her breathing. She was light, weak, and clearly tired. After a minute, he slowly helped her stand firmly on her feet. He checked her gently, making sure she wasn't hurt. She seemed shaken but unharmed. He asked softly, "Can you walk? Just a little?" She nodded. Ethan guided her toward Willow, keeping a steady arm around her back so she wouldn't stumble. As they reached the horse, Ethan lifted her carefully and settled her in front of him on the saddle. Willow remained perfectly calm, sensing the importance of the moment. Ethan swung up behind her and wrapped one arm around her to ensure she felt secure. "We're going to town," he said softly. "We'll get you help. You're not alone anymore." The girl leaned against him, exhausted but finally safe. Ethan held the reins firmly and gently guided Willow toward the path leading away from the shed, away from the fear she had faced alone. The sun had risen a little higher now, casting warm light across the field. And though Ethan didn't yet know the whole story, he knew one thing for certain. He had found her at the right moment, and he would not let anything happen to her again. Ethan guided Willow toward town, but after only a few minutes of riding, he felt the girl's body trembling against him. She had been through something frightening, and even though she tried to stay strong, her breath came in short, shaky waves. Ethan tightened his arm gently around her, not to hold her too firmly, but to let her know she wasn't alone anymore. "You're doing great," he said softly. "We're going to reach help soon." The girl didn't respond with words, but she nodded a little. Ethan could feel how tired she was. Her thin shoulders rose and fell slowly as she tried to steady herself. He wondered how long she had been tied up near that shed. He imagined she may not have slept, eaten, or even had water since the night before. It made his heart grow heavy, but he kept his focus clear. The most important thing was to help her feel safe again. They rode for a few more minutes before Ethan suddenly slowed Willow down. He had a thought, a very important one. If they went straight to town without understanding the danger she came from, they might not know what or who they were dealing with. The girl's condition showed that something serious had happened, and Ethan couldn't risk taking a wrong step. He needed to understand what had happened, at least a little, before reaching town. He gently tapped Willow's neck, and she stopped near a cluster of tall trees that provided shade. Ethan looked down at the girl. She hadn't said anything the entire ride. She was curled slightly inward, holding her hands near her chest as if trying to protect herself from the memory of what happened. Ethan spoke softly. "Would you like some water?" She turned her head slightly toward him. Her eyes were tired, but she nodded. Ethan carefully dismounted, making sure not to disturb her balance, then helped her climb down. Her legs shook when they touched the ground, so he steadied her with both hands. "Easy," he whispered. "Take your time." He led her to a fallen log where she could sit comfortably. She lowered herself slowly, letting out a very soft exhale. Ethan took a small canteen from Willow's saddlebag and knelt in front of the girl. "Here," he said gently, unscrewing the lid. "Take small sips, not too fast." She took the canteen with shaking hands. The water must have felt refreshing because she closed her eyes for a moment after the first sip. Ethan watched her carefully, making sure she didn't choke or spill. After a few more slow sips, she lowered the canteen and held it in her lap, staring down at it quietly. Ethan didn't rush her. He waited patiently because he knew she needed time to feel safe enough to talk. A breeze passed between the trees, making the leaves whisper softly above them. The peaceful sound seemed to help her calm down a little. After a few quiet moments, Ethan spoke in a gentle tone. "Do you want to tell me your name?" The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Lily." Ethan smiled softly. "Lily, that's a beautiful name." He paused, keeping his voice calm and slow. "I'm Ethan. I'm a rancher. I found you near an old shed on my property. I'm taking you to town so we can get you help. You're safe with me, all right?" Lily nodded again, though she didn't look up. But the small nod told Ethan she trusted him at least a little. He waited a few more seconds before asking the next question, careful not to rush her. "Lily, can you tell me what happened? Only if you feel comfortable." She swallowed and took a shaky breath. Her voice was small, almost like a whisper being carried by the wind. "Someone brought me there. I didn't know where I was. I tried to get free. I called for help." Her words came out broken at first, but Ethan listened patiently, giving her all the time she needed. "It was dark," Lily said, her voice trembling. "I was so scared. I kept trying to move, but I couldn't get loose." Ethan pressed his hand gently on her shoulder in a comforting way. "You don't need to tell me everything right now," he said softly. "We can talk later when you feel stronger. The important thing is, you're safe now. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Lily looked up at him for the first time. Her eyes were watery, but there was a faint glimmer of trust in them. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan gave a small nod. "You're welcome, Lily." He stood and helped her back onto Willow. This time, she seemed a little less tense. She leaned back against him, not out of fear, but because she was exhausted and knew she could rely on him. Ethan gently guided Willow forward again, heading toward town at a steady, calm pace. As they rode, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about everything Lily must have gone through. She didn't look older than 11 or 12. Someone had frightened her deeply, and the thought made Ethan more determined than ever to protect her. The dirt path was long, and the warm sunlight grew brighter as the morning continued. Birds flew overhead, making soft sounds that filled the empty spaces of silence between Ethan and Lily. He didn't push her to talk again. He simply rode in silence, letting the peaceful road help her settle her mind. After a while, Lily spoke quietly, surprising him. "How did you find me?" Ethan looked down at her gently. "I was checking the ranch like I do every morning," he explained. "I noticed something moving near the shed, and when I got closer, I heard your voice." She pressed her lips together. "I thought no one would hear me." Ethan shook his head slightly. "You did the right thing by calling for help. You stayed strong. That's the reason I found you." Lily's shoulders relaxed just a bit, as if she felt relieved to hear that. They continued riding until they reached a small clearing with a view of the distant town. They were still far, but the sight gave Lily hope. She pointed weakly. "Is that where we're going?" "Yes," Ethan answered. "We'll get there soon. There are people who can help you. The doctor is kind and the sheriff is a good man. You'll be taken care of." Lily leaned her head slightly against Ethan's chest, not fully resting but allowing herself to relax. She had held so much fear inside her, but now that she was finally getting help, her body slowly began to release the tension. Ethan kept his pace steady and spoke to her once in a while, just to remind her she wasn't alone. "Almost there. You're doing great. We'll be safe in town soon." Each gentle sentence helped Lily feel a little more secure. When they reached the wooden bridge that connected the ranch trail to the main road, Lily tensed again. Ethan felt the small movement and reassured her immediately. "Don't worry, this is just the bridge. Nothing will happen here." She looked around, scanning the trees as if expecting someone to appear. Her fear was still fresh, and Ethan knew it would take time for her to feel safe again. Once they crossed the bridge, the scenery changed. The path became wider, the land flatter, and the distant buildings of town grew clearer. Smoke rose lightly from chimneys, and the sound of a few early shopkeepers opening their stores drifted faintly in the air. Lily watched quietly, her eyes following every movement with care. "It looks peaceful," she whispered. "It is," Ethan replied. "These people look out for each other. They'll look out for you too." After another 10 minutes of riding, Ethan gently slowed Willow as they approached the town entrance. Lily held onto his arm tighter, unsure of how people would react to her sudden arrival. "It's all right," Ethan said softly. "I'm with you." She nodded, taking another deep breath. They passed the bakery, where Mrs. Thompson was taking out fresh bread. She looked up, noticed Lily, and her expression turned to concern. She waved Ethan over. He shook his head lightly as if to say, "Later," and continued riding. Lily saw the concern in the woman's eyes and looked up at Ethan. "People here care," he said gently. As they moved deeper into the town, more people noticed them. Ethan kept his eyes forward, guiding Willow with steady confidence. He didn't want Lily to feel overwhelmed. They were almost at the doctor's clinic now. And though their journey had just begun, one thing was clear. Ethan had reached her in the exact moment she needed someone the most, and now he would make sure she stayed safe. Ethan guided Willow toward the doctor's clinic as the morning light spread across the town. The streets were slowly filling with people beginning their day. Shopkeepers prepared their stores. Children walked with school bags, and neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles. But as soon as they saw Ethan with the little girl on his horse, their expressions changed from casual friendliness to quiet concern. Everyone in town knew Ethan well. He wasn't the type to create drama or appear flustered. He was calm, steady, and rarely looked rushed. But today, even from a distance, people could sense something serious had happened. The way he held the girl close, the tired look on her face, and the quiet way they moved through town made it clear that this wasn't an ordinary morning. Lily could feel people watching her, which made her grip Ethan's sleeve with trembling fingers. She didn't know these people, and she didn't know how they would react. She had already faced too much fear, and her body still remembered it. She leaned back a little against Ethan, seeking the safety she had felt since he rescued her. "It's all right, Lily," Ethan whispered gently. "They're just worried. They won't bother you." Lily nodded slowly, though her small hand didn't release his sleeve. They reached the clinic, a small wooden building with white paint and neat windows. A sign above the door read, "Dr. Whitlock, General Care." Ethan slid off Willow first, then carefully lifted Lily down into his arms. Her legs weren't strong enough to hold her for long, so Ethan kept one arm around her back while she steadied herself. He pushed open the door and a soft bell rang. Inside, the clinic smelled faintly of herbs and clean linen. Dr. Whitlock, a man in his early 50s with round glasses and a gentle face, stepped out from the back room as soon as he heard the bell. "Ethan," he said, surprised. "You're here earlier than usual. Is everything all right?" His eyes fell on Lily, and he stopped mid-sentence. Concern washed over his face instantly. "Good heavens," Dr. Whitlock said, rushing forward. "Bring her in, quickly." Ethan helped Lily to a small bed by the window. She sat down slowly, her eyes scanning the room nervously. The doctor knelt in front of her, giving her a reassuring smile. "Hello, sweetheart," he said kindly. "My name is Dr. Whitlock. I'm here to help you. You're safe now." Lily looked at Ethan again, as if asking silently whether she could trust the doctor. Ethan nodded gently. "It's all right," he said. "He's a good man." Only then did Lily relax enough to let the doctor examine her. He checked her breathing, her pulse, and her hands. He spoke softly the entire time, making sure Lily didn't feel scared. "She seems exhausted," Dr. Whitlock said after a moment. "Frightened, dehydrated, and tired. But physically, she appears mostly unharmed. She'll need rest, food, and someone with her." "I'll do whatever she needs," Ethan said immediately. Dr. Whitlock gave a grateful nod. "Let her rest here for a moment. I'll bring some warm soup." While the doctor stepped away, Ethan pulled a wooden chair next to Lily's bed and sat down. She looked at him with wide, tired eyes. "Are you staying?" she asked softly. "Of course," Ethan said. "I won't go anywhere." For the first time since he found her, Lily allowed herself to relax a little. She leaned her head back against the pillow, finally letting her body rest. Ethan stayed by her side, watching her carefully. He wasn't thinking about his ranch, his morning chores, or the rest of his day. All he cared about was Lily's safety. After a few minutes, Dr. Whitlock returned with a small bowl of warm soup. Lily tried to lift the spoon, but her hand trembled too much. Ethan noticed immediately. "Here," he said softly. "Let me help." He held the bowl and fed her small spoonfuls. Lily took each one slowly, like someone who hadn't eaten properly in a long time. The warmth of the soup seemed to bring a little color back to her cheeks. When the bowl was empty, the doctor placed a blanket over her legs. "She needs rest," he said. "Let her sleep for a while." Lily's eyes were already closing. She looked at Ethan again, whispering, "Thank you." Ethan gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Rest, Lily. You're safe." Within moments, she drifted into sleep. The room became quiet. Ethan sat back in his chair, letting out a slow breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Saving Lily had required fast thinking, steady nerves, and a calm mind. But now that she was safe, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. Dr. Whitlock placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You did the right thing bringing her here. Do you know how she ended up on your property?" "Not exactly," Ethan said. "She told me someone brought her there, but she couldn't explain much. She was too scared." Dr. Whitlock nodded thoughtfully. She'll talk when she's ready. For now, rest beside her. She'll need someone familiar when she wakes." Ethan stayed with Lily for nearly an hour while she slept. From time to time, she stirred slightly, but each time she sensed his presence, she settled again. He couldn't imagine leaving her alone for even a moment. A soft knock at the door interrupted the quiet. It was Sheriff Harris, a tall man with a calm authority and a steady voice. He glanced at Lily with gentle concern before turning to Ethan. "Dr. Whitlock informed me that you brought a young girl in," the sheriff said quietly. "Mind telling me what happened?" Ethan told him everything, from the moment he saw movement near the shed to the moment he cut the rope and helped her down. The sheriff listened closely, nodding slowly. "You saved her life," Sheriff Harris said. "Not everyone would have acted that quickly." Ethan shook his head. "Anyone would have helped her." "Not the way you did," the sheriff replied. "You kept calm. You protected her. That shows something." Ethan looked toward the sleeping girl. "I want to keep her safe until she's ready to speak." "And you will," Sheriff Harris said. "We'll handle this carefully. For now, let her rest. We'll ask questions later when she's stronger." The sheriff left quietly, and Ethan returned to his seat. Lily slept for almost 2 hours. When she finally woke, her eyes blinked open slowly, adjusting to the soft light of the room. Ethan leaned forward, giving her a warm smile. "Feeling a little better?" he asked. Lily nodded weakly. "I slept." "You needed it," Ethan said. "How do you feel now?" "A little stronger," she whispered. Her voice wasn't as shaky as before. Dr. Whitlock came to check on her again. Lily responded more confidently this time, answering simple questions and drinking more water. When she felt comfortable enough, she looked at Ethan with hopeful eyes. "Can we leave the clinic? I don't like small rooms." Ethan nodded immediately. "Of course, you don't have to stay here if you're uncomfortable. We can go somewhere peaceful." Dr. Whitlock smiled. "She'll be fine as long as she's with someone she trusts. Take her outside for some fresh air." Ethan helped Lily to her feet, making sure she was steady. She held onto his arm tightly, but she didn't seem afraid, just cautious. They stepped outside into the warm mid-morning sunshine. Lily closed her eyes and took a deep breath, letting the fresh air wash over her. "Better?" Ethan asked gently. "Much better," she replied softly. They walked toward a quiet bench near the edge of town, where a small garden grew with colorful flowers. The gentle scent made the atmosphere even more peaceful. Lily sat beside Ethan, her legs still a little shaky. After a moment, she spoke in a soft voice. "When you cut the rope, I thought I was dreaming." Ethan looked down at her, his expression tender. "You weren't dreaming, Lily. You were brave. You waited for help. And you called out until someone heard you." Lily looked up at him with gratitude shining in her eyes. "If you didn't come, I don't know what would have happened." Ethan placed his hand gently over hers. "But I did come, and I'll continue helping you. You're not alone now." For the first time since he found her, Lily smiled, small, soft, but real. Ethan knew there was still a long journey ahead. She needed comfort, security, and time to heal. But in that moment, sitting beside her in the peaceful garden, he felt something clear and strong inside him. Saving her wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning, and he would stay by her side for every step of it. After the rescue, the days that followed brought a strange mix of relief and confusion for everyone involved. The small town, which was usually quiet and peaceful, suddenly became a place where people whispered in the market, stared a little too long on the street, and discussed the events again and again as if every retelling would help them understand what had really happened. The rancher, who had never wanted attention, now found himself at the center of every conversation. Some people praised him openly, some spoke with careful admiration, and others watched from a distance, not sure how to approach him. He felt grateful that the girl was safe, but he also felt the weight of something bigger than he knew how to name. The girl, Mira, stayed with her aunt for the next few days. Her aunt was gentle, soft-spoken, and the kind of woman who made a home feel welcoming the moment someone stepped inside. She kept Mira close, making sure she ate properly, slept enough, and had someone to talk to if she needed it. Mira did not say much in the beginning. Her silence was not the silence of fear anymore, but the silence of someone trying to understand how quickly life had changed. She spent a lot of time sitting near the window, looking outside as if searching for a world she once trusted, but now saw differently. Her aunt noticed the way Mira's fingers sometimes trembled slightly when she held a cup. She noticed the way her eyes drifted away whenever someone brought up the past. She knew these things needed time, so she didn't push her. She simply stayed near her, letting Mira know she wasn't alone. The rancher checked on Mira every morning, though he always stayed at the door instead of stepping inside. He didn't want Mira to feel pressured. He would ask simple, gentle questions. "Did you sleep well?" Or, "Do you need anything from town?" And she would answer with small nods or quiet words. Over time, he saw small changes in her. Her voice began to hold strength again. Her shoulders didn't droop as much. Her eyes were becoming clearer, steadier. On the fourth morning, something happened that surprised him. When he arrived, Mira's aunt invited him in for tea, and Mira herself spoke before he could respond. She said, "I want to thank you." The words were soft but steady. He sat down carefully, unsure of what to say. She continued, "I don't know how to express my feelings, but I want you to know that I'm grateful. You helped me when I felt completely lost." The rancher simply nodded, not wanting to make her feel emotional again. He said, "I'm glad you're safe now. That's all that matters." After that conversation, Mira seemed a little lighter. She started helping her aunt with small tasks, folding clothes, watering the plants outside, or organizing the shelves in the kitchen. She even began walking in the garden during the evenings. Her movements were slow at first, as if she wasn't sure how far she was allowed to step into the world again. But each day she walked a little farther. Meanwhile, the rancher continued working on his ranch because that was the life he knew. The animals needed feeding, the fences needed repairing, and the land always asked for attention. But every now and then, he found himself thinking about Mira. Not with worry anymore, but with hope. He wanted to see her recover fully. He wanted her to feel free again, truly free, not just in body, but in heart and mind. A week passed, and one afternoon Mira surprised her aunt and the rancher by visiting the ranch. She arrived on foot, walking slowly up the dusty path. The rancher was repairing a fence when he saw her approaching. He wiped his hands on a cloth and walked toward her, not too fast, not too slow, just enough to show respect for her pace. "You came all this way alone?" he asked gently. She nodded. "I wanted to see the place. I remember it was the first place where I felt safe again." He smiled, touched by the honesty in her words. He showed her around the ranch, pointing out the horses, the stretches of field, and the small hill behind the barn where the sunset always looked beautiful. Mira listened quietly, but each moment she listened a little more comfortably than the last. There was a peacefulness on the ranch that she had forgotten existed. The soft sound of the wind brushing through the grass, the distant calls of birds, and the warm sunlight made her feel grounded again. She realized something important. She wanted to rebuild her life, not run from it. Over the next few days, she visited the ranch more often. Sometimes she helped feed the animals. Other times, she simply sat on the wooden fence and watched the horses move gracefully across the field. The rancher never rushed her, never asked her to do anything she didn't want to do. He simply created a space where she could feel like herself again. One afternoon, she finally opened up. She told him everything she had held inside, her fears, her confusion, the things she avoided talking about with anyone else. She spoke slowly, choosing each word with care because she didn't want to go back into the dark memories, but she needed someone to understand. The rancher listened quietly, without interrupting. He didn't offer empty advice. He didn't tell her to move on. He just listened, and sometimes that was all a person needed. When she finished, she took a deep breath. It was the kind of breath that carried weight, but also clarity. The rancher said softly, "You're strong, Mira. Stronger than you think. You've already taken the hardest steps." From that day on, Mira's recovery moved faster. She laughed sometimes, the kind of small laugh that surprises a person because they haven't heard themselves sound that way in a long time. Her aunt noticed it first. "Your smile is coming back," she told her, and it was true. Mira was slowly shining again. As more time passed, the town began to settle back into its normal rhythm. People still remembered what had happened, but now they spoke with more encouragement and less fear. They were proud of Mira, proud of her courage, and grateful for the rancher who had stepped in when no one else had. The rancher, however, didn't feel like a hero. He had simply done what he believed was right. One evening, near the edge of the ranch, Mira and the rancher watched the sunset together. The sky was painted with warm colors, gold, orange, soft pink. The air felt calm, the kind of calm that fills a person's heart with quiet hope. Mira breathed in deeply, feeling the world around her and within her. "I think I'm ready," she said softly. "Ready for what?" the rancher asked, turning to her. "For my life," she answered. "The one that's waiting for me?" He nodded, understanding without needing more explanation. She continued, "I want to work, study, and build something of my own. I don't want fear to decide anything for me anymore." The rancher smiled warmly. "You already have everything you need to move forward." Mira looked at him with gratitude. "I couldn't have reached this point without your help." "You reached it because of your own strength," he replied. "I just stood nearby." The days that followed were filled with new beginnings. Mira began helping her aunt with a small business idea, something she had always dreamed of doing but never had the courage to start. They created handmade items, and slowly customers began to visit. Mira found joy in learning new skills, talking to friendly visitors, and making plans for the future. She also continued visiting the ranch, not out of fear or dependence, but out of genuine friendship and appreciation. The rancher became a steady presence in her life, someone who showed her that kindness could be powerful, quiet, and deeply healing. With each passing day, Mira's life became brighter. She discovered her own strength, her own voice, and her own future, one she could shape freely. She realized that her story was not about fear or loss. It was about courage, trust, and the unexpected kindness of a man who chose to help at a moment that changed everything. The rancher, too, found something meaningful in their connection. He learned that a single act of help could create ripples beyond what anyone could imagine. He learned that healing wasn't a straight path, but a journey made up of small steps, gentle encouragement, and steady support. And together, without forcing anything, without rushing, they wrote a new chapter in their lives, a chapter filled with peace, hope, and the reminder that even in the most difficult moments, a second chance can bloom into something beautiful.